by the process, but there's an improvement in the quality of service. Ultimately, it's the incentives that are engendered in the agreement, in the model agreement, that can determine the success of the PPP. In a weak institutional framework like India, weak governance, weak enforcement, I think not only PPPs but a lot of other governance structures fail. But PPPs have been kind of particularly unsuccessful in India for one reason, because of weak institutional governance standards. And there's, as I said, as Navroz also said, and I'm again scratching his back, so there's been political capture. There's been complete political capture of the regulatory process. And if you have independence, if you have those good people, then, why shouldn't PPPs also work? But I agree with you.
Okay, I'll try and also, following Sony, try and keep us moving towards lunch as fast as possible. Just 3 quick points. And this is a slight departure now from Rajat, myself being completely on the same page, a slight nuance of what he was saying. I think the excellent people is a necessary condition. I don't think it's sufficient. I think if you put them in a position where they're going to have to make decisions where they're fighting against all the sort of political structures, even those excellent people won't last long. So I just want to, make that point. I wouldn't want to leave it that it's just a selection issue. Selection is part of the story, but there's a larger structural issue. On this decentralization of the states, I think it's a much more nuanced question. I think you could find lots of examples where you do want to have much more fine-grained regulation. Transport, metropolitan transport is an excellent example. Electricity is an excellent example because it's very different state to state. Airports, I'm not so sure. Airports, you have the same players across the country. You have the same sort of private players. You have the same people constructing it by and large, a handful of companies. You have relatively similar market conditions. I'm not really sure you would actually want to have state level, So I think it's case by case, and one has to look at that. I want to actually respond just briefly to the last presentation. I was glad that our colleague here sort of said, look, let's not just because we have a stick in our hand, beat everything that comes by us with that stick. I think it's a fair point. But I want to observe a little bit, again, I think there's scope for some nuance, and I'm glad he's made that point. The nuance is this, that we have done much better in general with financial sector regulation than we have done, say, with infrastructure regulation, in general. And one of the reasons is, and this I mentioned this book that we've just recently completed, this colleague of mine and myself, is we draw a distinction between the transplant process and how that then the regulator that gets transplanted gets embedded. And you find with SEBI, it was a homegrown sort of development. People thought hard about how to set up this regulator. Whereas in the case of electricity, it was just sort of a signaling effect. We have to have a regulator in order to attract private investment to electricity. With TRAI, it was basically because of a court order, essentially, that TRAI was set up. There was no real independent understanding that this will actually help the governance situation and how. There wasn't an ownership of it. So I think the path-dependent story, the histories are quite relevant. A final point on that is that you've actually seen with infrastructure regulators, I asked the question, why would ministries delegate authority increasingly? Why would they want to hand off part of their authority? And the answer is, nobody asked me whether, why, what they asked that question is, let me answer it myself. The answer is increasingly they're not. In electricity, the regulators have quite a lot of authority. They have tariff setting authority, licensing authority, and so on. In telecom also they have quite a lot of authority. You moved a decade later to petroleum with mid 2005. They have a very small sub-list of sectors in petroleum and natural gas that the regulator actually has any kind of authority over. The government has to notify sectors one by one, and the government has notified very few sectors. You fast forward another 5-7 years to coal. The new proposed coal regulator has no tariff setting authority, no licensing authority. It has less and less. So I think you can almost tell a story where regulators started out as an effort to send credible signals to the private sector, not very well thought out, and then you realize the powers that you realize that actually gets you into problems, because the regulators, what do? They try and actually exercise that authority, and they may do it in ways that are problematic. And so you slowly curtail their authority, and so you end up with the regulator moving more and more in the direction of a window dressing, which of course makes it not credible as a signal to the private sector either. All it becomes is a jobs for the boys institutions. So there's a sort of, again, to caricature for the point of debate, you see this tendency, at least in infrastructure regulation, and you see a different story in toll and financial regulation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Navroz. Just to add on to his point, this is, as you all know, as you were saying, SEBI was something which was very well thought out. It was true also because SEBI was existing from 1988. It was part of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, just a department like what we know about SFIO today. But in fact, it was Harshad Mehta who really breathed life into SEBI after the 1992 scam. So we should actually thank many of those people also, though in a lighter way I'm saying. So what I'm saying is SEBI was actually well thought out process, and over a period of time it has become successful. So the other point which you are asking, in that way UGC is also a regulator. See, as per the UGC Act, any university which wants to be set up, well, if you want to set up a university under the statute, it should be under a particular an act of legislature or parliament. That's how we have all these universities which are actually passed by, the laws are passed by, the statute is passed by the legislature or the parliament. We, in fact, in between we had a system of private universities in Chhattisgarh where one day 38 universities were registered and all. That was a single registration mechanism where you can simply go and register like a company. But that is not the regulation. The regulation clearly says if you want to be a university, it should be under a specific statute. For example, Calcutta University has a specific statute. Similarly, the Law University here, NUJS, is a specific statute where the chancellor will be either the governor or the president, or in this case, the NUJS case, it is the Chief Justice of India. So what I am saying is every university should be under a specific statute. But what is going to happen if a foreign university is going to come? Then they might actually, so what I heard is that Harvard is actually asking some kind of permission so that they can set up as a Section 25 company, which essentially will be a Section 8 company under the present Act. So to set up as a non-charitable company, a company with charitable objects. So there is under the present Act, 1956 Act, there is something known as Section 25 companies. You can set up without any intention to make profits. So Harvard University has already started communication with the government, saying if they want to come here, they will not be asking for the status as a university under the UGC kind of regulation, but they would rather set this as a Section 25 company, which essentially has become Section 8 under the Companies Act. So we have to wait and watch, but I'm sure it's going to happen.
I think this has been a most fascinating. I'm changing my hat now from a speaker to one of the representatives, and also the regulator, to kind of. I think we can continue this fascinating discussion over lunch. And the doors have opened, the room has become bigger, and you can see the food behind you. But before we go, let me just propose a vote of thanks. Let me thank profusely and profoundly, let me thank Vicky, Moshmi and Swati for having handled this event, very smoothly with, as they would say, with precision, that has done all of us proud. So thank you, Swati, and thank you, Moshmi, for doing this for us. I also profoundly thank CAS, as I said, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, our long-standing partners in crime, or in collaboration and in research, not in crime, that was, but long-standing partners. Pankaj is here, Marine is here, Dr. Schmidt couldn't be here, but in absentia, thank him, and thank CAS for their long-standing support to ICRIER. I thank the Minister, I thank Arun Maira for having spent the time, a lot of time with us and sharing their thoughts with us, Gaurav Swaroop as well. And lastly, also thank ICRIER and the representatives from ICRIER who are here and those who are not here. Mansi is there taking notes. Ali has been the architect of this program and is the kind of lead for... Ali, can you just show yourself? So Ali has been the architect of the seminar series between CAS and ICRIER, which we are collaborating with FICCI, and we are doing another one with FICCI in Kochi, a similar one with FICCI in Kochi a couple of months from now. Thank Manmeet and Neha, who've led the administration team excellently. And I thank all of you, media, professors, policymakers, representatives of the government, academics, for having spared your time and come here. Invite you on behalf of Moshmi and FICCI and CAS, invite all of you for